Okay.
But it is it does make a better story that we just laughed and rolled on the sidewalk like we were on mushrooms.
Yeah, he's a comedy writer, so he may have rounded up to the next sort of funniest.
And you know what? That's your job as a comedian and a comedy writer. You take the truth and you just bend it a little bit. Yeah. If it bends, it's funny.
If it bends...
Funny.
Is that Alan Alda?
Yeah. I can't do Alan Alda, though.
I didn't know anybody could. I only recently saw Bill Hader's Alan Alda on SNL.
Any Alan Alda. I didn't even know Hader did it. He does Malkovich great.
Yeah.
Also. David Gee MCs at the Improv a lot, and he does a nuts Alan Alda. Really? And he does Vince Scully, too. Oh. And sometimes he does like, every time I see him, I just go, do Alan Alda. Why don't you go tap dance on a grenade? I can't do it. And it's amazing.
I had people ask, anytime Broken Lizard does interviews, people want to say, okay, well, tell us about your comedy influences. And all the guys in the group, I mean, we all grew up watching Monty Python and SNL. But people always give me a look because what I say was, well, look, when I was a kid, there was this back-to-back programming before dinner time every night, which was MASH and Bob Newhart. Not the B&B Bob Newhart, but the psychologist Bob Newhart and
psychiatry.
Yeah, it's like I tell people like that. I can't think of anything more formative about me like getting into comedy or establishing my sense of humor than those two shows.
Those are big ones, man. I mean, those are that you can hang your hat on that.
Yeah, but I don't feel like people talk about MASH anymore. I feel like it's like square now. I don't know.
I don't think it's square. There was a laugh track, I believe.
They dabbled in and out. Like I feel like.
Nothing like a studio audience in a makeshift emergency room in a forward operating base of South Korea. When you get all those people from Santa Monica Pier, you want to go see a TV taping? Then you get them on Seoul Airlines. And you land them on the Frozen Chosen, and there you go. They give out some food and some drinks, and you watch Hawkeye Pierce botch an appendectomy.
Yeah. And back on the 14-hour flight.
How'd you have fun? It was great.
Great.
My wife once, when she was doing Unhappily Ever After, they dimmed the lights and the stage is covered by a giant curtain, or they roll those curtains over, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, quiet, we're rolling, we got a bell, we're ready to go, and then the lights come up and you see the house, the living room, and you just hear, oh, I hate this show. Like clear as you couldn't possibly not hear it. And they just had to go out and do their show with a talking puppet show.
Speaking of talking puppets, I just saw the trailer for Ted. You guys seen that trailer yet?
No, Maddie Cohen. Keep your mic hot.
Seth MacFarlane. It's like Garmin's in it too. Mod shout out. Yeah, Ralph Garman plays Wahlberg's father in the beginning. Yeah.
Oh man, it looks funny.
It's awesome.
Who's the puppet?
It's Seth MacFarlane doing a teddy bear, and that's Mark Wahlberg's best friend. And so
it's like Unhappily Ever After.
Basically, when Wahlberg was like a 4-year-old kid, he was on his birthday, and he wished that his best friend Teddy Bear could come alive, and he does, and they're all cute and like adorable together. And then cut to 20 years later, and they're on a couch taking bong hits and fucking looking at porn, and the teddy bear's like a fucking pot smoking pervert, and now Wahlberg's girlfriend wants him to, he lives with him. It looks awesome.
Yeah, Mila Kunis, and she's like, are you going to ever get rid of this guy? But they're, been best friends forever.
Hey, Teddy Bear.
And we're best friends. Yeah. The teddy bear's famous. Teddy Bear? They have crazy fucking Boston accents in it, the two of them.
The teddy bear's my best friend.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Why would he go anywhere?
That's what makes it so funny. Exactly.
The teddy bear's my guy. He's been with me since I was a child. I wished for him and he came to life. No, sir. There's no way I'm getting rid of my fucking teddy bear.
It's pretty much a movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm in. And I never even heard of this until you just said it.
Oh man, looks good. I'm psyched.
So when you're doing the sex scene with Cillian Murphy and
Lucy Liu,
yeah. When you say cut, do they still make out for a few seconds after, and you're like, "Well, a little something heating up between these two"?
No, they were. I think they broke it off. They weren't grappling after. I didn't have to come in and separate them. No. His wife was on, I think, hanging around. So I think it just, the moment got a little hotter than.
You could just say no.
Yeah,
but I like you. But you really, I can tell you're like
one-word answers.
You kind of wanted it to have gone that way.
Yeah, sure. I like the idea.
And if your friend, not Steve, but the other friend. The comedy writer?
Yeah, the guy, yeah, Brian, yeah.
If Brian he would have went, here's what happened.
Yeah.
She got up, the sheet was tucked in her underwear, and tore one of his ball bags. He would
They
have
kept
embellished
going.
it.
Yeah, no, it's
I did a
it's
sex scene in Seeing Other People, but it wasn't really. It was a sex scene. It was Julianne Nicholson. I did two. One was with the girl that's the Blink 182 drummers on again, Shannon Mokler.
Okay. Mochler?
Yeah. And I had to lay on her, and I couldn't get an erection, and I just sit on the side of the bed, and she goes, "Hey, maybe you're gay," and I'm like, "I'm not gay." I'm like because the whole movie we're supposed to go out and cheat, but I can't do it. I'm lousy at it. And we do this thing, and I keep laying on top of her, and I keep trying to go back, and then I go back to like angrily do it, and over all day, and then when we're done, she goes, "That was fun. Thanks a lot." And I go, "Yeah, thanks a lot." She goes, "And I'm 4 months pregnant, so I don't know how it was gonna go." And I like threw up a little in my mouth, like because I was like stage diving on top of this lady, and she just laid there 4 months with Oscar De La Hoya's baby.
Really?
And just let this guy, jump on top of her.
But think about it. That means you kind of shook up De La Hoya's baby a little bit. Like that was, some.
How'd you like that poor guy
Flesh.
from Blink 182 survives a plane crash? He comes home and his old lady's carrying Oscar De La Hoya's baby around. And all she watches is Airplane. She's got it on a loop in the house.
No, I've done two makeout kind of hot.
Anyone
I did
we
one. I
know?
made out in Supertroopers with Marisa Coughlan, who's beautiful and
Yeah.
she's awesome.
Great, I gotta tell you, really like sort of the watershed indie comedy movie, like the one that got the floodgates opened after Super
I
Troopers.
don't know.
How
But
much
the
did
first
it
one
cost
always gets screwed though. It's the ones that come after. What was the question? How much did it cost?
to make?
I think it was 1.3, and those
it made 30.
I mean, that's the really sort of slippery thing about it. I mean, I think it made like 20 in the theaters,
Right.
and
Which, by the way,
then
to put a pin in that for the listeners, we're with Paul Soter, Broken Lizard. That's ridiculous. That's 20 times that would be like if Harry Potter made $2 billion.
yeah, that's what's always been frustrating is that they don't, and that's frankly like you compare the theatrical performance to the life that it had on DVD, and it's ridiculous. It's one of the most sort of like I think last time we were told it's sold more than 5 million DVDs, and then you're like, all right, but if you made an album and you sold 5 million albums, you'd be the most famous rock star in the fucking world. But
How much of a back end did you guys have like that?
Nah,
We're new at
these-
this, so we don't get a lot of back
yeah,
end.
I mean, no, it was.
like Nirvana on
What-
Sub Pop.
That's what is, yeah, honestly, that's what is holding up. We were going to do the sequel, right? We didn't want to do it, and then we were like, all right, you know what, let's do it. And we spent 2 years writing this script, and finally, had this script that we totally, totally loved. And then when we submitted the script to Fox, was right at the time that the audit came in, because our investor on the first Super Troopers audited them. Because they kept saying, "Oh no, it hasn't made a profit." I mean, this was it was only 2 years ago that they were like, oh, "Okay, we finally, we're in the black."
Creeps.
So our investor audited them, and the audit came in ridiculous, $12 million owed. And so,
Wait,
it,
you three are owed 12.
well, no, it would be
You and your
basically
investors.
the investor, and then we're actually there's a whole food group of Jersey Films was involved.
But you're in
and
the
then-
group of people that are owed 12 million.
Yeah, I mean, I would get some trickle down, but what would be more interesting to me is, I'm much more interested in actually making the sequel, because now I have this movie that I love the script, and then all of a sudden it completely bogged the process down when this whole audit came in, and they stopped kind of negotiating on the sequel because they're like, well, we're not going to negotiate while this audit is up in the air, and we're like, all right, well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, it's technically it's this investor auditing, so we don't control the audit.
Right.
So they're sort of holding the sequel hostage in the hopes of making the audit go away, but we don't have the power to make the audit go away because it's the investor, and we're not going to tell him, you know what, make this thing go away if you're being told you're owed, $12 million. These actors aren't going to convince you to don't worry about that. We want to make the sequel. So
That's a ballsy move, though, Paulie, to say we're going to audit Fox.
but what we were told is everybody audits everybody. We were told that's just business. You don't get paid unless you audit them. And then what happens is you audit them, somebody digs up all these numbers, you end up with a number, and let's say that number is $1 million. You go back and forth, and then you settle for $300,000. Everybody goes home happy. So we were told that's just business. But for us, for some reason, when it came up with them, it suddenly became this like, who do you think you are coming in here telling us we owe you 12 million? We're like, we're not telling you anything. It's the investor audited you, and this is what happened. So it's this ridiculously hung up thing where apparently the hang up is some detail in the home video, and it's the same issue that Napoleon Dynamite apparently has sued over. So now our investor wants to wait and see, like, Napoleon Dynamite has gone to trial or is about to go to trial, and the investor wants to wait and see how that goes. Because if Napoleon Dynamite people win their case, then he's like, well, I'm not going to settle because the precedent is that these guys won.
They'll win.
So it's an incredibly boring answer, but the reality is, we would have this movie we'd love to do, and I can't go anywhere without people. I mean, I went to the Humane Society today because we're thinking about getting a dog, and like the guys who, hose down the kennels are like, hey, Soter, whoa, right on. That's always the first question people ask. Oh, are you guys going to make another Supertroopers? And I got to be like, tell them the 15-minute long story.
I would also go pot fest, but that's just because I'm a stoner. And,
we started the process on that. So we've sat down, we've had some sessions.
That's huge.
The guy at the ASPCA at the shelter had a podcast up and running right there. That's where you just came from. He was hosing out the kennels. I just handed you a mic and said, "What's going on?" And he got his 15 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, am I on the kennel show? Am I on the kennel?
No pot fest.
We would like to do it. That's an issue of like, we have internal arguments over whether that should be an actual sequel to Beer Fest with those same characters, because it's a little bit of a joke at the end of Beer Fest is that, okay, now we're off to Pot Fest. But
with Willie Nelson.
With Willie Nelson, yeah. And so, but the problem is, then that's a Warner Brothers property. And then now, like, all right, it's going to be the same thing with Warner Brothers. Do you really want to be beholden to another studio? Whereas we could just make a movie called Pot Fest, which I think would still be great. And it would just be us as 5 guys who go on a
shoot it here.
Pot Fest.
Use my house. Use
a
fake mustache studio production. But why are you able to now the sequel to Super Troopers? It's just in the grips of Fox. You can't.
Yeah, they own the rights. We've tried to,
and there's no statute of limitations.
Apparently not.
It's been 10 years.
I think now I was just reading something that something happened over the last 20 years where they've created it so that things just don't expire anymore. Like there used to be a cap on things, even if it was a long time. But then studios started lobbying to say, no, stuff shouldn't like ever expire or whatever. Because like Steamboat Willie was going to expire, the original Mickey Mouse, and
no Mick Mars from Motley Crue,
the Mick Mars movie.
He wrote. It's an old Willie Dixon song, really. Dome da dome da dome da dome da dome. Steamboat Willie.
He was the weirdest looking of the Motley Crue, and for a band called Motley Crue, he was.
I think he turned like 58 the other day. I was on Kevin and Bean, and they did Ralph Garman did celebrity birthdays, but he almost died. He has got some crippling disease.
Jeff Tremaine from Jackass, Jeff, friendly with him. I guess he's attached to do the Motley Crue story. Like it's set up at Paramount, I think, based on their autobiography. It came out a couple years ago.
I feel like I've seen at least 4 Motley Crue stories.
Well, like the behind the music.
Yeah, behind the music, the documentary on the Bio Network. It seems like there's been a lot of... I've watched him have sex with Janine Mueller, little tiny Vince Neil, with littler tiny Vince Neil. Who was the second woman you had a makeout scene with?
Oh, Kobe Smulders. And we were talking about the Slam and Salmon, which you haven't seen. It's the last thing that the group did. And that was great. That was the time when, like, I knew her. I knew who she was. I already had a crush on her. So coming into it, I was like, "Oh my god!"
Did you make out in the rehearsal tape? That's a fine line, right?
Yeah. No, we. Well, no. I mean, camera rehearsal. Yeah.
Usually, you go right to the listeners, not to you. And Matt's been on a lot of sets. Like, if there's a makeout scene, like. Let's just block this out, and then you hold hands, you put your faces close, and you just back away.
Yeah,
you just back away. And then when you do the camera rehearsal, let's just do one for camera.
Yeah.
You get close, and you just get kind of close, and that's been my experience. And then when you do it, take one, then old Jed's a millionaire.
Well, one of the smart things that I've ever done was this was an occasion where I was like, let's see if I can tell them to do this. I'll suggest this kind of tricky camera thing, like a 360 thing, so that it would require more takes to do. And sure enough, it was like 7 takes before we nailed it because it was going to be this kind of mock. You know how it is, like in the old shows when a couple starts making out, and then you get into like a